In this module, we will be talking about the most useful apps for permission management in your Confluence instance. The longer your Confluence site exists, the more users and groups appear in it. It becomes quite difficult to manage permissions with the help of standard administration tools. Some complex cases may require a lot of routine and manual operations. Fortunately, Confluence allows us to use apps that provide additional administrative functionality. Note that these apps are for Confluence Server. Apps for Confluence Cloud are usually very limited in functionality due to security requirements imposed by cloud architecture. Please pay attention to the terminology. Apps, add-ons, and plugins for Confluence mean the same thing. We will continue to use apps in our course. Now, we are going to feature some typical cases and suitable apps that can decrease efforts of the Confluence administrator. In the second part of our lesson, we will learn how to use these apps in practice. The first typical case is permission redistribution when you have a lot of users, groups, and spaces. As you remember, you can allocate permissions at different levels, globally, at the space level, and at the page level. You also need to consider that permissions given to the user directly and through user groups are combined. And all the time, you need to check plenty of settings before you understand what permissions this or that user really has and what should be done if you want to add or take away something. For such cases, we recommend you to use the Ultimate Permission Manager app from MetaInf. This app allows you to view user permissions per space on a single page in the user space permission matrix. You can modify individual or group permissions for multiple spaces simultaneously without visiting the space directly. With the help of Ultimate Permission Manager, you can easily find out why a user can or cannot see content in your space. The second typical case is to log into Confluence on behalf of a specific user and check all the permissions firsthand. This can be efficient in the following situations. User cannot explain what exactly is wrong. Or, for example, you updated permissions and want to check the Confluence macros that can be influenced by it. We mentioned these macros in our lesson number 3, the children display, include page, page tree, and page properties report macros. It is always better to see the problem, fix, and verify it after manipulations on permissions. But the continuous logging in and out is time-consuming and annoying. For such cases, we recommend you to use the Sue for Confluence app from the plugin people. This app allows you to authorize in Confluence on the behalf of a specific user. Check what you need and then quickly switch back to your administrator account. By the way, you can find similar applications for Jira, Bitbucket, and other Atlassian products. The third typical case is to store some confidential or sensitive information in Confluence. The smallest unit in Confluence is a page. If you want to store some confidential information, passwords for example, alongside with common information, instructions or algorithms description, you have to create several pages with different sets of permissions. But there are some problems. As we have already mentioned, you should always remember that system administrator can get access to everything. The second problem is the following. If someone captures your active user session in your browser, this intruder will be able to view all the confidential information in Confluence that you have access to. For such cases, we recommend you to use the Security and Encryption app from Service Rocket. This app allows you to insert a special secure macro on your page. Within the macro body, you can store some content and choose users or groups that are allowed to see it. But they won't see confidential information immediately after logging to Confluence. They will be prompted to enter their Confluence password to decrypt the information. So let's see how these three apps work in Confluence. Note that we will show only some basic functions related to our typical cases. You can always find more details in the documentation on the Atlassian Marketplace. As we mentioned before, the Ultimate Permission Manager app is a very useful tool if you have a lot of users, groups, and spaces. You can view or modify individual or group permissions on one single page without visiting spaces directly. You can find the menu of the Ultimate Permission Manager app in the Global Confluence Administration sidebar. Effective User Permissions Overview allows you to view a user space permission matrix. You can filter by usernames, full names, or space keys. You can also use a wildcard, the asterisk symbol, which replaces any possible ending of a username. The green, yellow, and red icons represent user permissions. Green for full, yellow for partial, and red for no permissions. You can easily view all the details and edit individual sets of permissions if needed. Even if a user gets permissions through a user group, you can modify individual permissions only for several spaces at once. You can also include anonymous users into your matrix and hide users with no permissions in all spaces or users with disabled accounts. Effective Group Permissions Overview allows you to view a group space permission matrix and edit group permissions easily. Effective Space Level User Permissions can be accessed from the Space Tools, Permissions. Here, you can type any page name within this space and explore permissions and page restrictions in a single view. The Ultimate Permission Manager app also provides the Who Can View macro. It allows you to list every user who has the view permission to the page containing this macro. The macro combines both permissions and page restrictions. The latter can be disabled. The Ultimate Permission Manager app includes another handy tool, the Who Can View button. This button is enabled by default, but you can disable it in the configuration menu of the Ultimate Permission Manager app. The Who Can View button can be clicked by any logged-in user and shows the list of users who can view this page. The SU for Confluence app allows you to take on the identity of another user and troubleshoot problems faster and more effectively. You can just see everything as another user, but you don't need to ask for a user password. So, you needn't reset a user password. Check the problem and tell the user to log in with a new password and change it. It will take extra time and your user won't be able to use Confluence during such manipulations. It is not a coincidence that the name of the app reminds us of the Unix or Linux command SU with a similar function, switch user. There are several ways to trigger the switch user inline dialog. The first one is to use G plus U hotkey on any page you like and choose the needed user. The second way is to enter admin console, users, and click the switch user operation. The third way is to enter the switch user mode through a user details screen. But don't forget to switch back to your own account once you are done with troubleshooting of the user's problems. If you are still logged in as another user, you will see the "SU Exit" item in the drop-down menu under the user icon. So you can easily switch back to your own account by selecting "SU Exit". By default, only system administrator has access to the switch user function, but you can go to Manage Add-ons, SU for Confluence, Configure, and change this option. For example, you can grant access to Confluence Administrator and specify other user groups that need switch user permissions. Note that users with the SU permission that are not system or Confluence administrators will be able to open the switch user inline dialog only with the help of G and U hotkey. As they can't see the administration console, they won't be able to enter user management. However, it is not safe to grant SU permissions to non-admin users. Sometimes it can happen that one user can see more content, spaces or pages while he or she is taking on the identity of another user. But of course anyone with the switch user capability, even Confluence administrators, can switch to a system administrator account. If you have several Confluence administrators, they can easily switch to each other's accounts as they share the same level of permissions. As you can see, the SU for Confluence app is a powerful tool that can cause trouble if used not accurately or by an intruder. So you can navigate to Users and Security, SU Audit Log. Here you can see who and when switched to this or that user. You can't delete this log manually, but you can choose the period of time after which your entries will be deleted. 10, 30, 60 or 90 days. By default, the purge period is set to 60 days. Note that it may be difficult to investigate incidents if you decide to choose a shorter purge period. So, the SU for Confluence app is very useful and handy, but you should always remember to grant administrative permissions to trusted and competent users only. The security and encryption for Confluence app is used for storage of confidential information when it is not convenient to create several pages with different sets of permissions. For example, if you want to store personal data, shared passwords, or seller account details. This app doesn't need any configuration and can be used right away after installation. Let's imagine that you need to create a list of user passwords. Some users can only see their own passwords and have no access to the whole list. Other users can't see any passwords at all, but they need to view this page because it contains some common information. So we need to insert the secure macro for every entry we want to protect. Now let's check the results. As you can see, you are prompted to enter your Confluence password one more time to confirm your identity. It is additional protection from intruders if someone captures your active user session in your browser. The password will be revealed only after clicking the Reveal button. So you can easily hide certain information from specific users or groups if you need collaborative editing of a page with confidential information. Later on, you will be able to restrict the page and copy confidential information from the secure macro to this page. But it may be difficult to hide your confidential information for the second time if you decide to update the page. First, you should note that the formatting in Confluence is richer than in the built-in editor of the secure macro. Some markup may get lost when copying. Secondly, people who can edit the page will be able to find that version of the page where confidential information is not hidden. You can also set your personal default timeout that is applied every time you view the secure macro. This setting will apply to all secure macros in your Confluence instance. The creator of the secure macro can always view or edit it. System administrator can see everything, but this information will be written to the audit log. If the secure macro doesn't allow you to decrypt confidential information, you can request access. Confluence will send the request notifications to the owner of the secure macro. The owner may edit the secure macro and change permissions. If the user account of the owner of the secure macro no longer exists, system administrator or Confluence administrators have default access to this macro in the page edit mode. Such actions will also be written to the audit log. At the end of our lesson, let's sum up all the new information. There are several useful apps for Confluence administrators. These apps can help you to avoid routine, manual work related to permission management. The Ultimate Permission Manager app is a handy tool for permission redistribution when you have a lot of users, groups, and spaces. The Sue for Confluence app allows you to take on the identity of another user without constant logging in and out, so you can troubleshoot problems faster and more effectively. The Security and Encryption for Confluence app is often used to store confidential information when it is not convenient to create several pages with different sets of restrictions.